G'day guys, Toast20 here and welcome back to Springfield. In the last episode, we were focusing on real-life examples as we were looking at places from the US that we could get a bit of an idea of how the city is going to take shape within a realistic way. In today's episode, we're back in good old Simpsons nostalgia as we develop up another very iconic location within Springfield and within The Simpsons, and that is the city center. Now, this isn't going to be the downtown or an area that is going to have any high rises. This is more the city center that you see a lot of memorable Simpsons moments take place. This is where the statue of Jebediah Springfield is. This is where the town hall is. This is where Mr. Burns was shot.
Just a minute. This isn't Mr. Burns at all. It's a mask. Wait, it is Burns.
There is just so much that happens within this area, and I think that it makes sense to do this in episode 4 now that we've figured out the layouts and we've built one of the most iconic areas, which is the nuclear power plant. And the plan is to build some of the most iconic areas within the within the city center now, and then revisit this area as we continue this series. So this isn't going to be like a done and dusted thing that I'm doing right now. This is very much let's build the most iconic things, let's place down where I think some buildings are going to sit, and then we're going to come back and revisit this area. I reckon this would be really fun to revisit in live streams. This would be really fun to do, at the beginning of some other episodes. It's just going to be an area that we're going to come back to quite a lot. So you won't see a finished picture, but I'm really happy with how this ends up turning out, and you'll see that procedural objects, the mod procedural objects, is very much my friend in today's episode, and it's going to be my friend moving forward because there are a lot of buildings that I just do not have, and the buildings that we can use, we can work with, are pretty close, but there's just a couple of little bits and pieces, little bits of detail that I just really wanted, and procedural objects is just going to totally help that situation. So you're going to see a lot of that in today's episode. This is very much a learning curve for me with procedural objects. I'm very new to it, but I just have an absolute ball trying to piece things together in today's episode. You'll see me work on the town hall today. In the first part, this does not come together quickly. This took so many hours just to try and figure out, but I do think the end product is decent enough. It's pretty close. The tricky thing with this town hall though is that, so in the older episodes, this town hall is a much smaller place and it looks a real particular way, in the 90s episodes of The Simpsons. And so much stuff happens around this town hall. The monorail guy comes here, and Mr. Burns is shot out the front, and this is a lot of very iconic moments that happen right here.
Mono.
But then somewhere down the track in some of the more recent episodes, this place seems to change into a courthouse, I believe, and it's a much larger looking building. But I'm not going to go for that one. We're going to go for the 90s version because that's the version that I'm the most familiar with and the version that I would like to stick with the most. So I haven't seen the Simpsons movie. I will be taking some references from that, but I'm very much doing my own map version. I'm doing my own version in terms of where things sit and where the city layout is. I know there's a lot of different maps out there, but the fact that they are all different and that they all change, and that even within The Simpsons, it changes all the time, I think just means that we can totally leave it open for interpretation and we can make our own. So this is very much my version of it, and I would very much love your help putting it together. So please hit me up in the comment section, please hit me up in Discord, wherever. I'll be very keen to get your input and suggestions, but I think the comment section in these videos are going to be the best places for that. So going back quickly to what I was talking about before, some buildings I can tweak with procedural objects and we can turn into the more iconic buildings of The Simpsons just by adding a couple of bits and pieces here and there. And I won't be doing so much crazy stuff with procedural objects like this for every building. Trust me, that's just a little bit too much work. And plus, I don't think I'll be able to do that with all of them anyway. There's some buildings that are just too iconic and too specific that I don't really think we can do that with procedural objects, but there are some that we can. But for the most iconic buildings within Springfield, like the Simpsons house, Flanders house, the Quickie Mart, Moe's, the elementary school, there's a couple of other buildings, but I knew that they needed to be custom made. So I have put a little bit of preparation into this project, and I have commissioned both King Leno and Die Hard Hunter, who have created a bunch of those buildings for this project, which you'll see in the next episodes. And I think that's pretty much the most iconic buildings, but there are still a bunch of other ones that, you know, there's a limit, you know, there's only so much I can get people to, you know, put time into creating these assets, especially those guys who are already really busy and, you know, wanting to create their own stuff too. So I'll put it out to you guys again. If you're interested in seeing more custom buildings put into this project, I am very much interested in more asset creators jumping on board with this project. I think that we have the most iconic areas down pat, but there are two things that I think we desperately need. And that is the Statue of Jebediah Springfield, which you'll see me try and do in today's episode, but it just fails miserably. You'll see that shortly. And I also think we need Large Lad because he's just so iconic. I just think he's so necessary in this series. But again, I think we can push forward. We can still build stuff without them. But if you are interested in getting involved, I would so love that. You know, there's only so much we can put into this project, and then, you know, just use procedural objects and, you know, just use the buildings that we have. That's totally fine. But if there's other people who are interested, amazing. That would just be so helpful. So yeah, thank you to everyone who's already been involved. Biswilhausen has also jumped on board and has created the monorail. Of course, we're doing the monorail. And in this episode, you will also see a bunch of custom billboards that was created by that Evan. I've worked with that Evan a couple of times. Actually, in all of my series, I've worked with that Evan, who always creates these custom billboards for the projects that I create. Usually, I ask you guys to create the custom billboard pictures, and then we send it to that Evan, and he does his magic and turns them into props. This time round, I did all that myself because I wanted to keep this project pretty secret, and I thought it'd be more interesting for them to show up in an episode quite recently rather than later on. So this is like, I had to do like quite a lot of Photoshop editing to create these. I mean, it wasn't a huge deal, but it actually took hours to do, but I do think it's really worthwhile. It was hard to find a lot of these billboards. I had to take screenshots from a lot of the more recent episodes who have like shots of these billboards that sit in the intros now, but a lot of them I felt like I needed to make some custom ones. So I made like an Itchy and Scratchy one, and I made a Krusty Burger one. So there's a bunch of ones that I had to make custom for this project, but I just think it adds so much to the atmosphere of this series. And yeah, you'll see them in the live play in much greater detail towards the end. So what we've been up to is we've built this town hall. Man, what an absolute mission. You were seeing so little footage of all this stuff that I had to do to piece this thing together. It was an absolute nightmare. But I do think the end result is pretty close to how it really looks. So what I've done is I've ended up using the amphibian house for that was included within the zoo element of the Park Life DLC, and you know, besides the color being a bit off, I think everything else is pretty bang on the money. I wanted to get the windows right, I wanted to get the awning right, I wanted to get the dome on top, that had to be perfect as well. So I went through so many different types of buildings to figure out which one's going to work the best to splice together, and this ended up being the perfect one. I've also included the sundial at the front of the town hall. This is where Mr. Burns was laid out when he was shot by Maggie Simpson. Sorry, spoiler alert. And like I said before, this changes location quite often, so the town hall changes so much. And I believe in the more recent episodes, it turns, rather than being a town hall, I think it might turn into the courthouse, but I'm gonna do the courthouse in the more like downtown region of the city instead. And I've also got this footpath that goes around the outskirts of the town hall, and I just think that's like a really nice touch. I drag a footpath underneath there, which is an invisible footpath, so you'll see people walking along there, which is really nice. And now we're starting to work on the main park that sits in the middle of the town, and this is where Jebediah Springfield sits, the statue of Jebediah Springfield, I should say. For this, I tried to use an asset that is a statue of me, in fact, which is kind of random. But this is a statue of me that was included in a project that I did called Osara with Skibbeth a couple of years ago. And yeah, someone made a really great custom statue of me, so I thought that this was pretty close to the statue of Jebediah Springfield, so trying to use procedural objects to splice it and change it and make it look like he's kneeling down, because that's how Jebediah Springfield looks. I also thought it'd be cool if I removed his head as well, but it just looked a little bit strange. So yeah, I'm just trying so many different things. I'm even trying to put like the bear underneath him by like just moving some nodes together. I don't know, it's very wonky, it doesn't look quite right, but you know, the whole scheme of things, it'll do. Like, we don't desperately need a statue of Jebediah here, but it would be a cool little feature, I think. It'd be quite nice. Now I'm just working on the park a little bit more, placing down some trees and some hedges and stuff like that. I didn't want to crowd this place up too much because I know there's like a lot of functions that happen here. So I did want to leave a bit of room for, you know, stuff like tents and Ferris wheels, and it'd even be kind of cool if I don't know, found a catapult on the workshop or something like that. But I don't know, that might just be a little bit random, just randomly placed there, but that might be something we can add a little later on. I'm sure there's probably a catapult on the workshop. And then the stores that are around here. So I did mention at the beginning of this episode that it'd be fun to revisit this area and just add those little details, and I think it'd be really fun to make sure that each one of these buildings had some sort of reference to The Simpsons. So there's like comic book guy who could be, you know, his shop could be around here. And there's just a bunch of other ones that we could, you know, just give shop fronts to. Procedural Objects has this really great feature where you can add text. So even just adding text above some of these shop fronts is just enough for me to, you know, show that this place is owned by that particular shop in The Simpsons. So I think that'd be really cool. You're going to see a bit of a jump cut. So we're going to work on this in a time lapse for a bit longer, and then when I go into the live play, a lot is going to be completed because I think it'd be better off shown in a live play rather than me just placing down buildings. And then I'm going to show you a lot more details that I've added because there's just so many really fun details that I've just placed down, and I just think that it just shows a lot better within the live play instead. But I tell you what, in terms of like trying to figure out how buildings look and the different shops that there are within Springfield, the game Springfield Tapped Out, or I think it's The Simpsons Tapped Out. I've never played it, but there are a bunch of pictures on Google that's showing quite a lot of detail how these buildings look. So if you're ever interested in trying to like figure that out, or you want to help out, go and check out Tapped Out, or even just type in Springfield Tapped Out and you'll see a lot of the buildings and you'll be like, oh, of course, I forgot all about that building. Oh yeah, I remember that one. That totally needs to go here. That's also been really helpful, is like remembering what types of buildings, and I've just been screenshotting a lot of them on my phone, you know, just as I've just been killing time or whatever, and you know, just to help myself remember what types of buildings to place down. And also like when I scroll on the workshop and, you know, think about the types of buildings we could be using, you know, that also helps out quite a lot. All right, this donut shop. I mean, I think this works out pretty well. It's a bit of a stretch and there's no buildings that look like this in The Simpsons, but I just think this donut is so perfect. And, you know, regardless, I think it's just my own adaptation of the Lard Lad, at least for the time being until we get the Lard Lad, but there's no way I can create something in Springfield and not include a donut.
As Hannah's defense attorney, I feel we should be massive. Hey! Did you just take a bite out of me?
Maybe.
So yeah, donut. It's here. I like it. It's probably to stay. Or I might place it somewhere else. I'm not quite sure. But I do love it. I think it's just like a cool little touch. And even like the pink frosting, I think is pretty damn perfect. And you'll also see that I'm doing quite a lot of detail around here. That's because it is just such an iconic area and I think it deserves a lot of detail, but I'm not going to do this much detail in everywhere else. Only the most iconic areas and only the areas that really deserve it, but there's going to be a lot of suburbs and a lot of commercial blocks and even office blocks and definitely industry that's just going to be so plain and so basic because, you know, I want to try and keep my FPS somewhat decent. But for these more iconic areas, I think it's really necessary that we do that. But like I said before, you are going to see a big time jump and you're going to see a lot of changes as we go into the live play, and I can show you a lot more details and the intricacies that I built. And again, I do plan to revisit this area and we can add just those little extra details that I'm pretty sure I've definitely missed. You know, the more I look at this statue, the more I realize it's not going to cut it. I think we need the real thing, guys. If you've got any skills in asset creation, I'd so love a Jebediah Springfield sitting here instead of a very wonky Tools 20. So yeah, no pressure because it's fine for the time being. But if you've got any skills and you're interested in helping out, I'd really love that. And while I'm at it, I might actually make sure that path's going around it because I don't want anyone walking through this, because this is going to be a pretty, and it already is, but I want this to be a very detailed and very picture perfect town center, and a bit of work to be done, but I've done a little bit of work as well because I just want this to be so iconic and I want every square inch to reference the Simpsons as much as I can. So I've even started adding in these custom shops. If you see me adding a custom shop, it's because I've seen it on The Simpsons, so that's why we're putting it in. We've also now got a whole bunch of these billboards that's made by that Evan and myself. I made the pictures, I found them on the internet and did some Photoshop, and that Evan turned them into props, which is just so great. I'll show you more of them, they're over there. But I just want to show you a couple of other things that I've been doing, just adding in those little hidden details that are just so fun to create. And yeah, this custom town hall, what do you think? It's pretty out there, and we do need to fix up some things if I can be bothered, but I think it's fine, and it took ages, but I love it. I think it's great, and I love that it's a zoo. I use this building so often, by the way, and this is probably one of my favorite little spots that I created.
I don't know. There's something very peculiar about this.
Sheesh! You're the most paranoid family I've ever been affiliated with.
I just couldn't help myself. It's so good. But yeah, police station, and I've also put in a car impound back here with a Batmobile, of course.
And how come Batman doesn't dance anymore?
Nice meeting you.
But yeah, I mean, so much. There's a lot of detail in this, and there's still like a little bit more I want to be putting in. Yeah, I couldn't help myself. I think it's just so great. And man, guys, I would so love Doughboy. Again, if you guys, I don't even know how you'd even make Doughboy, but fire out. If I could get a Doughboy in this city, that would be just like my dream come true. But in the meantime, I'm pretty happy with my custom building. Pretty sure King Leno made this, but I just put a little sign on there just to make it my own. And this donut, I mean, that's very Simpson-esque, isn't it? And just back here, I think this is probably one of my favorite back alleys. Pretty simple way of doing it, and it's going to be my technique going forward in this project. Basically using this Japanese road here, and then just putting in these car park roads, and obviously there's a pretty big lip for the cars to drive over. But like I think that's fine, because I think the vibe of it is just pretty great. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I also just put in some office blocks sitting behind here. But as you can see, like, we've got the main detail around here. I'd say this block here is the finished version of everything. This is like getting there, but the way that I'm thinking about tackling this project is I'm going to just expand out with buildings like this. Just expand, and then as I read your comments, as I think of more businesses or iconic areas within The Simpsons, I'll just change them up, or like, you know, put in those buildings, or maybe make them a little more custom or whatever, so that we can see the city expand, and then we can add the touches as we progress. And I just think that's going to be a really great way of expanding out. But as you can see, we've got like a pretty good expansion going on. And for what is a city I'm basing off a cartoon, it's probably my most realistic looking style of city, in terms of layout at least, because I really love the position of the town center. I think it's pretty accurate to where a town center would be. It's next to the train line, which is, again, I've never managed to, for some reason, get a train line properly running through my cities before. I've always done them very unrealistically, but this one's actually working really well. And the town center is, yeah, next to the train line. It's also next to the river, which again would have been part of industry coming into the town when it was much smaller. And then you can also see how the highway is just cut in to that grid layout, and it's obviously something that's been expanded on as the city's progressed. And I'm just really happy with that because I've never really done that before. And even where the town hall is, I think that is a very realistic place to stick it. And further expansion, I'm going to be putting the main center, or I guess like the skyline around here. There's not going to be much. I don't think we're going to go much taller than this, or we might. I don't know yet. That's basically the answer to that. I don't really know. And in terms of the next episode, I'm pretty keen to work somewhat around here and get in a bit more of a population, because I think, yeah, we need a bit of a population. And I think it'd be really fun to work around here, which is close to the train line. And I'm thinking I'm going to make this the rough side of town. Being so close to the train line, and there's so many great spots that we can take reference from The Simpsons. I can already see the types of buildings I'm going to be placing down here. I'm thinking like Herman's gun shop. I'm thinking the bowling alley and Moe's, and any sort of buildings that I think will best fit around a dodgy neighborhood. We'll do that around here. So that's what I'm thinking for the next episode. Bit of expansion and maybe a little bit of detail. But also, I'm pretty keen to plop down some of the custom buildings that some of the other asset creators have made for me. Die Hard Hunter and King Leto have created some really great assets, and I want to place them down as soon as possible. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll do that in the next episode. Yeah. I love this. I really do enjoy it, and I hope you guys are enjoying it too. Do let me know in the comment section if you are, and if there's anything that you want me to build within the city, any references, any ideas, hit me up in the comment section below. Before I head off, I want to give a special shout outs to some of my patrons like Ben Tricky, Dan Foster, Ben Redfern, Xavier Chung, Phil Garrard, and Leo Horton. Thank you guys so much for your support. It's very much appreciated, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!